Hi, friends. Welcome in. It's so grateful to have you all here with us. We're about ready to start the show. I wanted to do a quick rundown of some of the housekeeping before we get into the main part of the recording and get things going. Our guest will not be able to view the chat, so that doesn't mean anything for you. Keep your comments and questions coming in. We will get to those after the break. Like I said, just keep them coming in, and I might not even interact with them, but know that they're being seen, they're being grabbed, and we will get to those after our break. We're going to run through a set of questions about our guest Kaysen's gender journey, and then after that, like I said, when we come back from the break, we'll talk about all of the things about him outside of being trans. I don't believe there's anything else I need to cover right now, but let's go ahead and plug some of the things that we've got going on the Transverse real quick. On Saturdays, we have a new show called Being Trans with Lilith and Amanda. They are a really funny group, a really funny couple of trans women that do a couple different segments they put it together in one show. They do the show and then edit them into the separate segments, and it's just basically a lot of fun. There is Transition Tuesday as part of that, where they answer an important question about the trans experience that is usually culled from Reddit, and then they have a show called Culinary Delights where they talk about some of the internet's worst recipes. Always hilarious, and depending on how they're feeling, either Who's That Turkey, where it's a guessing show trying to figure out who the clues are pointing to, or Who's That Hero. So yeah, this last weekend they did Who's That Hero, and it was fun. So yeah, tune in for that show. That is Saturdays at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. Dresden Media says, highly recommend Amanda and Lilith. Yeah, they're so much fun. And hi, Tony. How are you doing? We're going to go ahead and run the intro and start the show once we let the hair down. I think I'm got myself all put together. I'm get back with my guest and start the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. I'm very excited tonight to welcome to the show Kaysen Truth. Kaysen is a 32-year-old trans man who is currently living in Baltimore with his wife. Originally born and raised in Houston, Texas, he's an advocate for social justice, half of Ren's Case on YouTube, photographer and social worker. And y'all know how I like to do here. We do the show live, and love the fact that y'all are here with us. And then we release it as a podcast and on YouTube. And I hate it when I really botch an intro, and I did pretty bad there. So let's go ahead and try this one again. Kaysen Truth is a 32-year-old trans man who is currently living in Baltimore City, Maryland with his wife. Originally born and raised in Houston, Texas, he's an advocate for social justice, half of Ren's Case on YouTube, photographer, and a social worker. Everyone, welcome to the show, Kaysen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here and hanging out as I try to get that intro right. Let's start off, jump right into your story with my favorite question, kind of a nice little icebreaker here. How did you find a name that suited you?
Ironically, it was my wife who found my name. So my parents, both their names start with a K, and I have a younger sister. Her name starts with a K. So I kind of wanted to stay in that theme. Went through like several different names, and none of them felt right. And then she was looking up something, and she was like, "What about Kaysen?" And I was like, "I like that name." And then we were kind of like messing around with the spelling. So initially, I changed the spelling like 3 times, but that name just always stuck. And then I looked up the meaning, and I was like, "Yeah, that kind of it described me." So I was like, "This is it." And that was like been transitioning for like 6 years now. So I think like 5.5 years in, it's like when I was like, "Okay, this is the name. This is the name I'm going to stick with." And it just stuck, and it's been Kaysen ever since.
You mentioned that you've been transitioning for about 6 years. At that point, 6 years ago, what was it that sort of triggered your awareness of the fact that you were trans and the need to begin transitioning?
So ironically, once again, my wife kind of like pointed it out to me. So this like when we first started dating, she was living in Los Angeles and I was living at home in Houston. We were on FaceTime one night and I was just like I was kept pushing down my chest and she was like, "Do you think you have dysphoria?" And at that point, I didn't know anything about like transness, what that meant. And I was no, she I think she brought up like something about my chest and I was like, I can't wait to not have a chest anymore. At that point, I wore like two, three sports bras, just trying to bind essentially. So she was like, "Do you think that you could be transgender?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is." So once we got off FaceTime, I looked it up and I was like, it kind of clicked. I mean, like I always had body like this dysphoria, horrible dysphoria, like when I hit puberty. But as time went on, I just kind of pushed into the back of my mind. But then when she brought it back up, and I like did some research, like that's what it's been my whole life. So once I realized that I was trans, it was kind of just like, okay, like what are the steps do I take? Like how do I get on hormones? Like who do I need to speak to because I have found the answer to the problem. So yeah, that was kind of like step one, just like going to therapy, finding a doctor. I literally probably after my 25th birthday, probably like 2 to 3 weeks after I turned 25, I packed up from Houston and moved to Los Angeles because I was like, I have to get on hormones. Like at that point, it was like life or death, and I was like, I can't not like be who I know I am,
Mm,
essentially. So yeah, and then like once I left, everything just like 5 months after I left, I started on hormones, and it's been like on go ever since.
mm. Was hormone therapy a lot of those kind of transition goals? Did you feel like those were impossible or at least going to be very, very difficult where you were in Texas?
Yes, I definitely knew that living in Texas that it, and I was living with my mom. So like, this is not, it's not going to happen.
Mm,
At that point, I literally dropped out of college because it was just I was dealing with so much like dysphoria, like mental anguish, and I never knew where it was coming from. I just knew that I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy in my body. I just couldn't pinpoint it. And I was like, living in Texas, you have to jump through several hoops, and it's not worth it. And I was just like, I didn't want to stay in Texas, start my transition, and then literally had to stop for some reason, like some
mm,
stupid reason, because of how transphobic, homophobic the governor is in Texas. So I was just like, if I move, I want to move to a liberal state. And I was like, no better state than California. No better city than Los Angeles because it's Los Angeles. So I knew that once I moved there, I would have access to some of the best trans care,
mm.
which I did when I first started.
Yeah, very, very true. California best state. Woot. So I love that you alluded to learning that you were trans, putting those pieces together all suddenly really illuminated a lot of things for you and made some
Mhm.
things made sense that you've been struggling with for a while but couldn't put words to because you didn't have the
Mhm.
language. I think it's kind of fun when we have that moment and are able to kind of trace back and reevaluate our lives to that point. What were some of the key points in your life that you look back on now and go, okay, yeah, I understand this now, with this transgender lens?
Okay, starting off, like I never liked wearing shirts. I was always the quote unquote girl outside playing basketball with the boys, no shoes on, no shirt, like just running up and down the street, playing football, like doing everything that traditionally quote unquote boys would do. I'll never forget this. I was 9 or 10 years old, and it was the first day I got my menstrual period. I cried for hours, and my mom could not understand why. She was excited, like all the women in my family were excited, but I was just like, "What the fuck is this? What is happening to my body? I'm growing boobs. I didn't ask for any of this." So I was just like, from that point on, like when puberty started, I was like, hey, yeah, this doesn't feel right. Like I can't not wear a shirt. I have to wear a bra now. Like this, it just felt super uncomfortable. And I kind of just learned how to like mask those feelings and just like kind of lean into being the quote unquote oldest daughter that my mom wanted. Like I forced myself to date boys. I literally basically doing everything that I thought everyone else expected of me. But it really, looking back on it, I was extremely depressed.
Mhm.
Like wearing the mask, just going through the motions, just trying to be who I thought essentially my family wanted me to be, more so who my parents wanted me to be, because I am the oldest child. So I was my parents' first daughter, and I had in my mind that I can't fuck up because I have a little sister looking up to me, so I have to be the quintessential perfect daughter.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know how much of that pressure I felt. I mean, I transitioned super late. It took me a long time to really kind of clue into what had been going on. I feel like for me, it was just from the the very beginning. I was just hyper aware of the fact that I was, I was a boy, and that I was supposed to be a boy, and I just never. I never even played with the idea of being a girl. I loved to hang out with them. I always had girlfriends, so I could hang out with them, but it was always from the context of being a boy. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah. But where I did feel that that experience that you got that you mentioned there is when I did transition. My the middle brother, the one that was closest in age to me, it's been really hard for him because of that, like because he looked up to me as the older brother and the kind of leader of how he should be, I guess.
Hmm.
And I just
Hmm.
threw that all out the window in transitioning. um, how has it been with your family since? Let's start with your parents, and then I would definitely love to hear how the perspective has shifted with your younger siblings.
Okay, so when I first came out, very traumatic story there. So when I first came out, of course, more so my mom, because I mean, I have a relationship with my dad. It's gotten better, but at that point, me and my dad really didn't talk. My parents divorced when I was like 12, so growing up, it was just me, my mom, and my sister, my teenage years. So my mom and sister took it the hardest because my mom more so, she was like, well, I would have seen the signs, and you're not trans, you're just confused. And basically my mom blamed my wife, said basically was saying like my wife was putting these thoughts in my head. Like I'm just like, so I you're basically insulting my intelligence. Like I can't, like I know who I am. I know my body. I know that I don't feel comfortable in my body. So my mom struggled with it the hardest. She cried, said she felt like a failure of a parent. At first, my sister was saying the same thing my mom was saying, like they didn't want to believe it. They were just saying, oh, like you're just confused. This is just another phase, XYZ. Because previously to come out as trans, I came out as a lesbian. My freshman year in college, my mom didn't take this so well either. I come from a very conservative Christian background. It's Texas, the South, the Bible Belt, all that. So when I came out as a lesbian, my mom, of course, she cried and she was just like, she felt like a failure of a parent. Had my whole family pray over me, pray the gay away. Essentially, that shit didn't work. So I kind of went back into the closet, and then I was like, at that point, I was like, okay, look, I can't no longer hide who I am. And that's also what prompted me to move out because my mom essentially said, like, you can't be trans on hormones living in my house. So I said, okay. I wrote her a letter. I was like, this, like, I'm moving out essentially. I packed up what I could in a suitcase, moved in with my girlfriend at the time, which is not my wife. And then I just figured it out from there. I essentially, once I moved, I cut my family off. Like, I didn't talk to them for like a year and a half. And it hurt me because like of how close we were. But I was like, if you're not going to be able to accept me as who I am and who I'm telling you I am, there's no need for us to have a relationship. So when my mom said that, oh, he's serious. Like I cut everybody off. Then that's when she was like trying to. She started educating herself on me, even having to ask her. Started educating herself on me, having to ask her. So I mean, like when I did start talking to her, like when she would mess up with the name and pronoun, she would correct herself. I wouldn't have to tell her. She would like apologize. She's still like that to this day. Like I mean, she's gotten better about calling me the right name and pronouns. But my sister, same thing. Like my sister is probably not my biggest advocate. Like she will fight someone if they like misgender me or call me by the wrong name. My dad is slowly coming around. My dad's wife, surprisingly, she calls me her like my stepmom. She calls me her son. She refers to me as her son. My birthday was last Wednesday, actually, and she actually made a Facebook post. Me and my stepbrother, my younger stepbrother, have the same birthday, and she was like, "How blessed am I to have two sons that share the same birthday?" I was like, "See, it was very affirming." But my dad, like, he still refers to me as his child. He hasn't called me his son yet, but I know he's coming around because like when we got married last May, I asked him to tie my tie for my wedding. So that was kind of like a big thing because initially he was kind of like standoffish, but he actually did it, and we like had a nice conversation while he was tying my tie for the wedding. So he's coming around. He just hasn't verbally called me his son, but he calls me by the right name. He's still struggling with the pronoun, but he still calls me by the right name. So at least he's trying.
Yeah, I'm not holding that hope on the whole daughter thing. I the fact that I'm welcome in their house and they try with the name and the pronouns is kind of the best I can hope for at this point. We'll
Yeah,
see. But that's amazing that you have that support within that house. So, he might not be all the way there, but with his wife being fully on board and that, like, I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help chip it away a lot of that.
yeah, and I've noticed it's like at first it was very awkward, like coming around him, but now like the beginning of my transition, like now that he actually sees like I literally look just like a younger version of him, I guess it's kind of still awkward for him to see because of course he still sees me as his first child. So, but I mean like when we're out in public, like he uses like refers to me like using like masculine pronouns. But it's just like when we're at home in the house, it's kind of like I still see that internal battle because he wants to call me by my birth name. He's called me that for 25 years, but slowly but surely. But I mean,
Mm.
I'm not. If it happens, it happens. Because I'm mentally to the point in my transition to where I know who I am. So you calling me the wrong name doesn't bother me anymore. You using the wrong pronouns doesn't bother me anymore because I know who I am. I'm more secure in who I am now than what I was 6 years ago.
That's amazing. And it sounds like as soon as you came out, you kind of knew your roadmap, you knew your plan. As you moved along through your journey, though, did your goals shift? Did things that were important to you kind of fall away, or things that you thought maybe you would never do or achieve in your transition change and become high priorities?
So the main priority has always been like what started testosterone before even getting surgery was getting my name and gender marker changed. That was ironically the last thing that happened. So I lived in California for probably like 2.5, 3 years. The main priority when I was in California was just getting on hormones, staying on hormones. So I did that for like the first 2.5 years, and I moved, relocated to New Orleans, Louisiana. I stayed there for probably like 2 years or so. And when I moved out there, I was working at Starbucks, and the only reason why I took that job was because of I knew that if I worked there 20 hours a week, I could get medical insurance. So I did that. The sole purpose, even though I fell in love with the job, but the sole purpose was for me to get top surgery. So once I got top surgery, I probably stayed at Starbucks for like another year and a half or so, and then I left. And then it's like, okay, top surgery was kind of it wasn't a big deal initially, but as I progressed in my transition and I started to be quote unquote more cis assumed or passable, it was kind of like, okay, bonding every day became mature. So set up a consultation with the doctor. He told me he was like, okay, 6 month wait. Okay, no problem. But like as it got closer to that 6 months, like I felt like my dysphoria just kept inducing and inducing to the point I was like, okay, can we like push it up a week? Can we push it up 2 weeks because I can't do this binder anymore? So luckily he had two cancellations. He called me one day. He was like, hey, I have next Thursday open. Do you want it? I was like, yes. So recovering from top surgery was it was more of a mental strain on me than it was physical because physically I healed up within like 2 weeks. I could go back to work, no problem. But just sitting there and just like Because at first, like they told me in therapy before I got top surgery, like you're gonna regret your decision, like regret this decision. It doesn't mean that you made the wrong choice, but everybody, it's just something that happens to everybody mentally. So literally that second day, I was just like, what the fuck did I just do? Like this is something that you can't come back from. And I ironically had to go back to the hospital the day after I came home from top surgery because the drains weren't properly draining. So I'm already like freaking out. My wife is like, okay, it's like the blood is just stuck. And we were scared that I was gonna like hemorrhage or something. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm on the way back to the hospital. And my brain, I'm like, I think I just made the worst decision, like an irreversible decision. But I talked to my doctor about it. He's like, no, that's normal. You know, everything looks great. You're healing up perfectly fine. So that also like gave me like a boost of like serotonin that was very affirming. But after that, I was like, okay. You got top surgery. The last thing on the list is getting your name gender marker changed, which I started that process in Louisiana before I moved. Sent out the paperwork and everything, and just got lazy. When I moved out here, probably like 6 months of me living in Baltimore City, I was like, I never heard back about my name change. So the courts literally were holding my paper in Louisiana. It was like, yeah, your name change has been approved. So I was like, okay. Ordered the paperwork probably another 6, 8 months later, literally just sat on it. Because I was like, at this point, like, yeah, my job know I'm trans. They don't make a big deal about it. They use the right name, right pronouns while I'm at work. So I really wasn't pressing the issue. But I was like, okay, it's been at that point, it's like, okay, it's been like 5 years. Like, you have to get it changed. Because, like, on, like, I was like, okay, you show your old ID, and people are looking at me like this is not the same person. So at that point, so like this kind of become like a safety issue. So that's when I just when I got everything officially changed, gender market changed, and then that brings me to now. That's pretty much where I am now. My transition. I really don't think I would pursue any more surgeries besides hysterectomy. I think I'll be done after that.
Mhm.
But kind of trying to save my eggs because me and my wife do want to do reciprocal IVF. So
Hmm.
I think that'll be like after that. I probably think I'll be done with surgeries. It's like the the financial strain can't work, and like I'm a busybody. Like I can't just sit still. Like I have to be a moving. I guess well,
Mhm.
capitalism is really why I'm like this.
Hmm.
You just have to have money to buy things. So, but yeah,
So have
I
you
think.
you've gone through all the name change stuff. Did you go through changing your birth certificate? You were born in Houston, right?
Hmm.
Um,
That is
that's
something I have not done.
okay. I was gonna say because that's
Yeah.
I've been lazy. I've had lots of lame excuses for not getting my name change done yet either. But one of the big ones is the birth certificate because I too was born in Houston, Texas. So I am not looking forward to any of that process.
Me either. That's why I haven't started it. I know I have to get like a letter from the course out here stating that, transgender. I went through everything, but I just know that that process in Texas, either they might give me pushback or they might not. But I'm just at the point to where it's like I don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah,
So I'm at
I
the point to where if I need to get it changed, I will. But if none of my documents really require it, I probably won't
mm,
be, you know, pushed to get it changed.
yeah, I completely understand that, and there's a lot of wear on our psyche that being trans in this society causes, and I completely understand
Hmm.
just like not wanting the fight. We talked a bit about before the show about the intersectionality of being trans and being black in this country,
Hmm.
and I was kind of asking a little bit about as visibility has improved for trans people. We have more allies, we have more people coming out, but we've also seen that backlash of people creating nasty laws against us. Um, for you, how has that intersectionality of being trans and a black person in this country affected your journey?
It's a two-edged sword. For the most part, some days it can be very tense. It's it induces a lot of anxiety because some days, stepping out into the world in general, the first thing that they see is a black man. So I have to be more cognizant of that. Pre-transition, I was presenting as a masked lesbian, so it really didn't matter. I was quote unquote safe. So now, like, I have to be more aware of that. When people see me, they don't see a trans person; they just see a black man. And to some folks, that could be scary. Some people, they just see me as a person, but for the most part, it's very scary because now the longer I've been on testosterone, the more people perceive me as a man. Some people might see me as aggressive simply because I am just a black man, and all I'm just trying to do is just exist. I'm just trying to go to work, come home. That's it. I don't. For some people, it's not an issue, but for me, it's just like it honestly depends on the day. Some days I wake up with so much anxiety because it's just like, if I get stopped by the police, will I have time to call my wife? Will I have time to at least pick up the phone and call anybody? Or will I just be literally just shot for existing? So, yeah, some days are better than others, but for the most part, it's just living in a constant state of anxiety
Hmm.
because I don't know what's going to happen once I step outside my apartment building.
Was that
So,
something that you were prepared for in any way in your journey as you I mean, being what our society would call a tomboy as a child. I'm sure
mhm,
that you had a lot of close relationships with men in in your neighborhoods and things like that. Was it
mhm.
something that you were really aware of, or has it been kind of shocking for you to step into this identity and really be seen as that?
Like from a child standpoint, it's like I've seen it, but I really couldn't like understand why they were treating like black men around me so harshly, like why society would treat black men around me so harshly. I just see them as my dad, my uncles, and my cousins. Like these are people that literally put their lives on the line to protect me. So why are they being treated like criminals? Like they're human like everyone else. So now that I'm in that position and I'm like literally being seen as a black man, it's kind of like I understand the frustration. I understand why like some days my dad would come home angry. Like why some days my uncles like they would just fucking drink just to drink. It's like it's that constant state of anger of being seen as the aggressor, even when you're just simply existing, just walking in the store and you're being followed around because you're a black man. And it's just like I'm literally like I don't have my hands in my pocket. I'm literally just in here to buy a pack of gum and something to drink and just going about my business. But the way society has, you know, propped up black men to just be seen as these angry creatures, it's kind of like I didn't understand it until I started my transition, and then mentally I noticed the changes of how before transition how I can interact with the woman and she wouldn't, like hold her purse close to her, or how she wouldn't feel threatened by my existence. As of like now, literally early this morning, I was walking to my car to go to work. It was a lady and her child. She had a little girl, and the little girl was like she wasn't in my way or anything. I literally walked around the little girl, just to let her keep playing. Her mom like literally like, pulled her closer to her, and I was like, I'm not trying to harm you or your daughter, ma'am. I'm just literally trying to get to the car to go to work. So like noticing little things like that kind of breaks my heart because it's just like I'm not the type of person. That's not who I am as a person. I would not intentionally go out my way to harm someone else. But knowing that people don't know that because they don't know me, they kind of just see me, you know, as a 5'7" black man, kind of like, oh. So it's kind of like I try not to internalize it.
Hmm. So would you agree that you faced a lot more kind of stereotyping, a lot more, uh, just discrimination, basically, on the male side of it versus when you were presenting as female?
Yes. And ironically, I noticed that from women. Men more so like it's just the whole bro code thing, which really rubs me the wrong way because it's disgusting in my opinion. But I have to, for my safety, a lot of times I have to lean into it for like my comfortability, like at jobs and like when I'm out in public spaces, because I don't want to be outed. Like if I'm not in like a communal, like an LGBT space, I don't out myself for safety reasons. But with women, yes, it's kind of just like I've noticed like the difference in interaction. So I purposely go out my way to show them that, hey, I'm not here to harm you. I'm not a misogynistic black man. Like I understand the struggle because I once was there. I was literally raised to be a black woman, so I
Mhm.
understand. Which is why I go out my way every time I can to show black women, like, hey, I'm with you. I'm not trying to fight you. I'm not trying to harm you. I'm here to listen to you because I know that often that you don't have that safety. You don't have that safe space to just vent to a black man. So, yeah.
We've talked locally in my trans peer group and here on the show quite a bit about those changes that happen that are unexpected, the ways that our connection and our ability to be in spaces changes as we transition. I have a trans mask friend who, you know, went to college and didn't feel safe coming out as trans amongst their little small dorm group, but they
Mm-hmm.
present they present as male. So
Mm-hmm.
they've sort of got that safety of being accepted as, you know, their true gender, but then they lose the access to the LGB and specifically the trans community and the support that's there. And it, you know, then we see with couples that are seen as lesbian and then suddenly perceived as a straight couple, losing the access to the community and things like that. Um, but then, you know, so it's that double-edged sword again of you have more safety, people aren't, you know, noticing you, or you know, you're just safer in the world, but
Mm-hmm.
you lose a lot of that connection. In the scenario you were just laying out, you know, you've got this perception of you and you're trying to break through that and say, hey, no, you know, I'm trans, you know, I've been through a lot of your experience. But then I got to imagine
Mm-hmm.
that that really starts to affect your feelings of safety and maybe your actual safety. So what have you been kind of doing, like do you still, in trying to relate to black women, try and avoid revealing that you're trans?
So it depends. First off, before I disclose anything, I like to test the waters to see, like, I'll bring up some type of random LGBT topic and see how they answer the question. Now, if I feel like it's safe for me to divulge, then I will. I think one of the few people at my last job that knew was my direct supervisor and of course HR, but another one of my coworkers. Everyone else literally didn't know. And I only told them because they both were in the community. My direct supervisor, she identifies as bi, and my coworker, she identifies as a masculine lesbian. So I felt safe with both of them to let them know, like, you know, this is who I am, X, Y, Z, and they didn't treat me any differently. But for the most part, out in everyday life, no, I wouldn't just divulge that I'm trans because safety.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like if I feel safe around someone that I really don't know, and I know that, like, hey, if I tell this to you, you won't tell anyone else, then I'll like say, hey, yeah, like I'm a trans man and I was born as female, and they're like, okay, well, I don't see you any different. Like I still see you as Case, and that's who you introduce yourself to me to. That's who I know, and it's just a conversation, and then they don't bring it up again. I don't bring it up again. It's like nothing ever happened, but. There have been a few times where my past jobs I have divulged that I was trans, and all the evasive questions come in, like, "Do you have the surgery?" And, "Well, what was your name before you transitioned?" And I'm just like, none of that is important.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. None of this is important. Like, if I told you, how is this information going to help you?
And definitely,
Like,
how is it going to
it's
help
not.
me? Like, how does that help our relationship? Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, like, so for the most part, everyone I've told has been accepting. I'm like, okay, well, you know, like, You told me your name is Casey, your name is Casey. You're a man, you're a man. And then, so thankfully, I've worked in like very progressive places.
At this point in your journey, do you still struggle with dysphoria?
Some days, yes. I have this phantom feeling. Some days I'll get out the shower and I'm like reaching over my head. I'm like, I don't feel anything there. It's some days, yes. It's kind of like I still feel like I have breasts. Some days it's like some days it's kind of like I teleport back to where I was when I first transitioned. So I do have my days where I like battle with dysphoria, but it's also like, okay, I talk to myself like, look, you've come so far. Like you can literally walk to the mirror, take your shirt off, and see like your like top surgery scars. Like you've come so far. Don't let what you think is there, like kind of psych you out into making you feel like you're not where you currently are.
So, what do you do in those moments to find, you mentioned it a little bit, but is there any other kind of any kind of routine or thing that you do to find that validity in your identity and to kind of reassure yourself that you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing?
I like to ground myself. Like if I can't get to a place where I ground, I just like meditate for like 30 seconds, just like, like calm my breathing and like try to stop my thoughts because I really am my own worst enemy. It's just like, okay, like try to make myself feel in my body, like kind of like the anxiety techniques, like we having a panic attack, just trying to calm my breathing. Okay, like what five things can you see? What do you hear? What did you smell? Just to kind of bring it back in and make myself like, okay, put in perspective. Like I have to remind myself pretty often like how privileged I am. Because where I am in my transition, a lot of folks unfortunately don't have the access to, they don't have the funds to access where I'm like been able to get to my transition. So I try to remind myself of that frequently. Like you don't know how blessed you are to have the money to do like to even transition. So just like don't obsess over the small things. It could be a lot worse.
Hmm. What has on an ethereal level, on a deep level, what has this gender journey for you meant? What has gender exploration meant to you?
What it means to me is it means a lot. Like getting to actually learn myself, learn more about myself. Because when I first started my transition, I am 180 of who I am today. I wouldn't say I had, well, no, I did. I had a lot of internalized transphobia because of the things that I was taught when I was younger. So I spent the first year of my transition almost crying myself to sleep every night because it was just like I kind of felt like, how did I not know that I was trans? Like listening to everyone else out, like everyone else around me making me feel like something was wrong with me. And I'm like beating myself up every night because it's like, well, why can't I be quote unquote normal? Or why couldn't I be quote unquote born as an A-male person? Or like things with my first time my children, like but I had horrible bottom dysphoria. But as time progressed, it was just like I had to learn how to be comfortable in my body, like learn how to be comfortable with what I was born with. Because it's just like obsessing over it, it's not gonna do anything but just make it worse for me. And even my wife, like we had a conversation at the time and I was like, would you like want to still be with me if I told you I wanted bottom surgery? And it didn't change her perspective, but she was like, let's unpack why do you want bottom surgery? Like, do you feel like it'll make you more of a man? She was like, I don't like a penis to me doesn't equate masculinity. So after we had that conversation, she was just like, I still see you as a man, whether you have like a penis or whether you don't have a penis. I still see you as the man you tell me that you are. So just uh, with a whole 180. So just having to unpack and unlearn a lot of like transphobic, homophobic things and actually learning who is Kason, what does Kason like learning me for me instead of like being influenced about around people outside of me telling me what I should like or what masculinity is supposed to look like or how I'm supposed to present myself as a man. Growing up, like men, well, the men that I grew up with, you can't get your nails polished, you can't go to the nail shop. I'm a according to Marvel, I am a pretty man. She's like to pamper myself. I like to keep my hair cut. I like to keep my nails done. I like to keep my feet. I like to keep up my appearance because it makes me feel good about myself. So the men I grew up with, they don't take a lot of pride in like what they look like. So I guess that's kind of what makes me different from them. And also, like I grew up with like a lot of misogyny, a lot of homophobia, a lot of transphobia, a lot of sexism. So just like consciously undoing that every day has helped me like this helped me a lot. This helped me grow into the man that I am today, the man that I'm proud to say that I am today.
What other things do you think you've been able to unpack in your life and make changes on, because of the fact that, you've accomplished this one big change um, and, thrown that set of rules aside. Is there anything else like a major area of your life where you've been able to do that because of that new sort of sense of freedom and ability to really look at life?
It's allowed me to be more kinder to other people. Because I know at one point in time I was so mentally like I was in such a mental fog and just like literally on autopilot that I really wouldn't talk to people. So it's made me be more aware to be more kind of people because you never know what someone is going through. Like just you going out your way to have a 30, 45-second conversation with them might make their day. It might just even you just smiling at someone as you walk by them because you never know what people are going through. So just it's reminding me to just always be present in the moment because moments are very fleeting. And if me just talking to someone, if I can make their day just by me being myself or me or someone reach like a younger trans person reaching out to me just like because they feel like I've quote unquote accomplished so much in my transition, just being that person to give them advice like, hey, if you don't have access to hormones, it doesn't make you any less trans. Like your transness is still valid. I'm pretty much being the person that I wish when I was like wish that I had when I was younger. It definitely goes a long way.
I keep finding a lot of these questions seem to overlap, and I feel like you may have answered this one, but I'm going to ask it anyways in case there's something else that you feel fulfills this. Is there anything you feel like you've been able to accomplish because of the fact that you're trans?
Yes, I had previous to my transition, I had horrible social anxiety. For the most part, I would consider myself socially awkward, but it's not as bad as it once was. I guess because I was so hyper focused on how I would be perceived as a black trans masculine lesbian living in Texas, all the bullshit that comes with that. But at that point, I also wasn't comfortable in my body, and you could read that when you met me, like that this person isn't comfortable with themselves. Just knowing that I've done the work now, I've unpacked a lot of stuff, and I've like literally spent years mentally working on myself, and I'm more. I try to be more cognizant of how I show up in places and in spaces. So just not trying to. Well, I wouldn't say I seem intimidating, but that's just me looking outside looking in. Um, I just try to be as nice to people as possible because once again, you never know what someone is dealing with. Somebody might have a shitty day, and you just literally smiling at them as you walk by, kind of eases that tension a little bit.
What's your favorite thing that you have learned through your journey, either about yourself or the world around you?
Everything I learned about myself or the world around me. Don't take life so seriously. Literally, don't take life so seriously. I there's literally nothing to walk around angry about all the time. Like find the joy in the small things because the moments you're spending being angry, that's time you can't get back. And that's putting more stress on your body because you're exerting more energy being angry. So just let stuff roll off my back. Just trying to find the joy in the small things because ultimately that's what I'm going to remember is a positive memory or literally you see something that brings back a memory. I'd rather it be like a positive memory or instead of me remembering why I was upset over something probably so small. So just finding the joy in the small things, especially in the world, because there's so much hate in the world. Just trying to find something, find a reason to smile.
claw at any joy and any happiness you can find. I love that. What advice do you have to pass on to younger closeted trans folks out there?
Don't rush your transition. Transition when you're ready. Transness does not equal medical transition. Social transition is just as valid. I wish someone would have told me that because that's why I was in such a rush to get on hormones because I felt like my transit was not valid because I didn't look quote unquote passable. Um, your transit is valid. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Like you are who you say you are. Be comfortable in that. Stand in that. Don't let anyone make you feel differently.
Well, Case and Truth, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and all that wonderful advice.
Thank you. I definitely enjoyed being here.
All right, y'all, that is our cut for the edit of the episode. We're going to go ahead and take a break. We are not done. We're going to, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk about some more wonderful topics with our guest, Kason. And we'll be right back. What advice do you have to pass on to young or closeted trans people out there?
I just to say that you have to do what's right for you at a time that's right for you. No one else can make that decision for you, and no one else can push you into something that you're not ready for. You can't live your life to make everyone else happy all the time, because if you try and do that, you're going to fail. You're never going to make everyone happy.
I think getting a support network and at least telling a few close friends is huge. It's so huge, because those feelings of being alone and not being seen be really devastating. Having the support of a couple of really close friends or family members or whoever you trust is just absolutely huge.
Just find anybody to talk to that you can about this. If you feel like you're trans or you might be trans, or just find somebody you can confide in.
Having a group of friends, no matter how small, or somebody that can back you up and lift you up during it will mean the world. Because at first, everybody is scared. The more you go out, the more you build your confidence in yourself, the less it'll affect you. Everybody feels it and will continue to feel it. And it's just whether or not you let it overtake you and control you, or you let it go past.
Almost every relationship has grown deeper as a result of sharing this deeper part of myself. So I think there's something to finding your community to get to expand with and reinforce, but I think it then amplifies into almost every other relationship you can have.
I think that there's a struggle to transition the right way. Everyone's going to transition on a different timeline, in different order of operations, and as long as it happens how they want it to happen, that's a valid transition. And not transition is valid.
I do struggle with this. I should follow my own advice. Don't focus on like regretting things, like not ever, like not starting early enough or anything like that, because then you'll just go through a loop and just constantly think about it, and it's not something you can change.
I didn't take anything for granted. Every positive change, even most of the time, I swear it was just a placebo where I noticed some growth in places that I wanted growth, or I would notice like really subtle things. I swear every single day for that first year. And those are I looked at the victories more than I looked at anything else. And I think that's super important during the first year.
So much of transitioning is was just waiting on something. You know, waiting for things to happen in your body, waiting for things to happen in your brain, waiting for surgeries, waiting for name changes. Be patient, because what's waiting for you at the end is so worth everything, so worth everything that you felt, all the hurt that you felt, all the anguish that you felt, all the anxiety. It just makes everything so much better. I can't describe the feeling of waking up and getting to be me, this person that I've wanted to be my entire life, this person that I've known I was my entire life. It just makes everything so worth it.
I would go back and say, look, you're going to go through a lot of crap and it's going to be hard, but it's going to make you a better person to go through it and you'll be fine. Just know you'll be fine. Like, that's the main point they want to make.
You have to be you. You can't hide who you are. You have to be you. And I know that it's going to be scary and you're going to get bullied a lot. So be you, but do it in a safe way. Like, don't ever put yourself in danger. But also, don't cower down because it's going to be hard. Because life is hard.
It is.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Transgender Show. Thank you for hanging out with us over the break. So I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest back on. Welcome back, Kaysen. We had a comment from the chat. I freaking love you, Kaysen. You're just plain awesome.
Thank you so much.
And Rich, that was from Rich, and he says, the only question I have is, what is your cat's name?
So, me and my wife, we have this thing that every time we move, we get an animal. So the first animal we got, we moved to Louisiana. We named him after the woman that the state of California named after. So his name is Khalifa, but we call him Cali for short. And he is the boss of the house. he runs the house.
So
and he has a little fur brother that he's not too fond of.
Well, if I'm
named Nole after New Orleans.
If my math is right, you have lots of fur babies because you moved to California and then New Orleans and now Baltimore.
So we only have two. So yeah, we're debating now if we want another cat or if we want another dog. My wife wants a dog. I want another cat.
Okay.
So that's where we're at now. So we have yet to decide on what we're going to get next. But we already have the name picked out. So.
How long have you lived there in Baltimore?
2 years.
2 years.
So
Okay.
we're a little behind with getting another animal.
I was gonna say, like, what's the grace period there on?
She wants one as soon as we move, but I'm like, let's get settled first. So whatever we get, then the name's gonna be Camden after Camden Yard.
Being a massive Orioles fan, I approve wholeheartedly. Do you have much of a yard?
No, we live in an apartment, so we don't have a yard at all. So kind of like it's real city living. Walk outside, and we're literally in the heart of downtown. Nothing but pavement.
Mm-hmm. So no herding dogs, no border collies, no Aussies, nothing big, no Danes or Huskies.
No, like our dog, he's a little Maltipoo, but he acts like he's the size of a golden retriever. Like he has a huge personality. He's definitely a big dog at heart for sure.
So you've already done the dog thing. You've got that under control. So yeah, okay. I wanted to give some time to talk about you mentioned in your bio that you're a social worker and an advocate for social justice. You mentioned that you were doing that at least when you were out in California. What are some of the things that you really focus on in your social justice advocacy?
I definitely focus on like LGBTQ plus issues, especially like within the Black community, is something that's really not talked about. So just bringing awareness to those issues of people that look like me, people in my family, people that I associate with frequently, because unfortunately I am the only queer person that they do know. So just kind of make sure like they're aware of the LGBTQ issues, like things that don't just apply to me, things that also like affect them as well, like the abortion ban. Like my mom didn't understand why I was so upset about it because I was just like, God forbid, if I was to happen to get raped or anything, I would have to get an abortion. And she just didn't understand like, what? Well, you're a man. yes, men with uteruses exist. Like men with uteri exist, and some of them have to get abortions. Some of them don't have access to healthcare. Some of them might contract some type of STI, like just things of that nature. So like putting it in that perspective, they understand it. Of course, like racial injustices. That's something that's also been always been near and dear to my heart, even like prior to transition. So,
Hmm.
but now more so like where I'm at now, currently living in Baltimore is not really like a racial equity. It's more so like a class divide and class. So I'm really trying to bring awareness to like people my age that because I literally did not have any awareness of how bad it is out here, like with elderly people and like the pay gap, like how literally I didn't see it till I literally came out here, like how much more I'm making because I'm a man versus my like women counterparts. So just like bring that up to all my supervisors, like, hey, is something that we can do to fix this? Because 9 times out of 10, women are the ones doing more work than men. So why are they not being paid equitably?
Hmm.
So things of that nature. So I've been in talks with my current supervisor about that, and he's like trying to bring that up to his boss to see like if they can do something to decrease that pay gap. Because he said he's noticed it as well.
Hmm.
So just trying to make sure that everyone is being treated fairly across the board.
You mentioned that you live. I've counted at least 4 states along this journey, and you're talking about racial equity. Um, which of the states do you think you had it the easiest, and which one was the worst with those issues?
The easiest, ironically, will probably be Louisiana because I lived in New Orleans. New Orleans is a predominantly black city, so it was pretty much that's ironically where I felt the safest at. Um, the governor of Louisiana, he's a horrible person. But the city itself, it felt like I was at home. Like I was surrounded by people who looked like me. For the most part, we had economically, we were in the somewhat of the same tax bracket. Um, that's where I felt the safest. Where I didn't feel so safe was in Texas. Um, because of just like Houston, for the most part, is a liberal city, but I also knew not to overstep my bounds. 'Cause I always knew where I was. Like I knew how to navigate those spaces because I lived and grew up there. But it was always like because I grew up in the suburbs of Houston, so it was also like that fine line of you're a black kid in a suburban area. Just like you can be somewhere else and the police be called on you, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be seen as the aggressor, even just at that point as a mask presenting lesbian.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like that. I had to walk a very fine line living in Texas. But New Orleans, I didn't have that problem. It was just like I could literally navigate the streets of New Orleans like anyone else because I guess New Orleans is such a touristy city. They really couldn't tell if I was a tourist or if I lived there. So it was a lot easier with safety. Well, for me, safety because it's kind of just like I kind of flew under the radar per se in New Orleans.
Mm. You mentioned we were talking pre-show that in one of your jobs uh, that you struggled with some inequitable practices in the organization. And
Mhm.
this was at an LGBT center. What are some of the equity issues that even LGBT organizations get wrong?
Okay, so what I did notice that it was a big racial divide. The one instance that made me call them out on the inequitable practice was it was a resident. I believe they were having like some type of psych episode, and they kept threatening to put them in a 5150 hold. And I was like, can we hold off on that and involve let's not involve any police or anyone with a uniform and a badge because that might trigger them even more. And they literally said when they came in that they have a when they did their intake form, they said they had a huge fear of police. Anyone with a pretty much like police, they had a huge fear of like EMTs, anyone that had like a uniform that was associated with the law some type of way. So they kept threatening to put them basically sent to a psych ward for 3 days. And I was like, let's try to get them back on, like, regulated back on their meds. Let's trying to, like, let them calm down. Once they calm down, let's try to talk to them and see what we can do. But they were just so adamant. And because this person was a person of color, that's really why they amped it up more, because they was like, well, this person's becoming aggressive and they're destroying the lobby. And I was like, okay. And 2 days prior, it was a someone who wasn't a person of color literally had the same type of psychotic break, and they wanted to talk the person down. And I'm just like, okay, well, why can't we not? Why is it not the same across the board? Why are you so quick to, oh, let's call LAPD to get this person sent to the psych ward? Why are you getting this person some type of care? And I called them out on that, and they pretty much told me that essentially said I was being racist, when I was just like, no, I'm not being racist. I'm just calling things out as I see them, and I have other people to back up what I'm saying about like how we see the line of division and how like the white residents are treated versus how people of color, residents of color, are being treated. And they pretty much said that I didn't have any experience. I didn't have enough experience to speak on that situation, and they just ended up letting me go.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's really bad, really, really bad when you just can directly see an apples apples comparison of like there was a nearly identical situation and their immediate reaction was so different. And that's the thing that has been very frustrating. You know, you think that in communities that are marginalized, that they're going to be more sensitive and they're going to be aware and they're going to have practices in place, where they just won't have that natural bias that comes forth. And it's just something that um, even LGBT organizations struggle with, and it could be very frustrating.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. I think because like that was my first job in like within the community. I feel like when I got fired, I took it hard. I took it personal. I felt like it was attack against me and like my personhood. But I was just like, okay, I'm not the problem here. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to sit down with leadership and like management and say, hey, because I wasn't the first person to bring it up to them. Another person brought it up to me. That person got fired as well. We got fired at the same time, ironically. So it was kind of just like they don't want to do the work. They're just enjoying getting funding from the state of California to say like they have this center for LGBT youth, but you're not treating everyone equally, like equally across the board. Like you have certain people living in certain dorm styles, or I've also noticed that when I was there, they would monitor people of color like more closely when they were showering, and I wasn't doing that. I told them I wasn't going to do that. And I feel like that was the first strike I had against me, because I'm not going to treat them any different than I would any other resident. Like, and they noticed, the residents noticed that too, so they would like kind of do stuff because they knew they could get away with it. And I was the type of person, I'm going to hold everybody accountable. Like, I'm literally, essentially, I was a glorified babysitter. So I'm sitting here basically watching you go in and out the center all day. Like, if I'm going to ask a person that's like the person of color where you're going, I'm going to ask the person that's not a person of color where you're going, because I literally had to know in the case, like if we had to call the police and we had to reach out to somebody's family member, if something like happened to someone, like I needed to know, where you were going, if just in case I have to call a family member, just in case I have to call the police, like where are you going, what time do you want to be back, things of that nature. But I noticed when those people of color, like they were questioning to the third degree. Well, you said you were going XYZ, and you said you were going to look for an apartment. You left the paperwork here for. I'm just like, it's not. These people are 18 and up, like they're little young adults. And at that point, I was like 25. I'm like, I can be their older brother. I wouldn't question my younger sister like that. So why are you basically making me question them like I'm their parent?
Mhm.
So yeah.
let's shift gears and let you do a little bit of a plug on what you've been doing. So, we mentioned in the intro that you're one half of Ren's Case. What is that? What are you all doing with that? And is that something that you're still actively putting out there?
Okay, so we said we're gonna start back, but that was just me and my wife when we created a YouTube channel talking about our experiences as me. One, like that's when I was like in the beginning of my transition, absolutely transitioning, and it was about like us as a couple, me as being the trans man in the relationship, but from her perspective, like how it's affecting her mentally. Like basically, it was like a video diary of her basically expounding on her experiences with dating a trans man and like all the mental things that came with that. We talked about like how our families, when I first came out, like how our families accepted it. Like we talked about the argument that her and my mom and my sister had. We talked about like when she told her family that I was trans, how they reacted. We're not as active as we want to be. I believe that channel's probably been inactive for probably 4 years or so. But because life happened, and then we lost the camera, and then we just never picked back up. So yeah, but we're gonna come back because it's been a while since I've been in front of the camera, and a lot of physical changes have happened. My voice has significantly got deeper. I have a lot more facial hair. I'm like the same person, so I feel like it'll be good for us to come back. But that's like where some people actually know us from. Like a lot of people have wrote both of us and said like, "Hey, my partner is trans. My partner's thinking about starting their transition, and we found like you guys' video, and it helped us out a lot." So yeah, it's kind of just like a video diary. It was kind at one point it's like a week by week from like the day I got my first shot until I believe right before I got top surgery.
Mhm. Do you ever go back and look at any of that and how does that feel looking at the just basically looking at how far you've come, looking at this baby trans that's just starting and is excited but afraid and all of that.
It's so cringy. It's so cringy. Like looking at myself like pre-T, like hearing my voice, and it's like looking at a kid version of myself. It's like I know exactly who this person is, but I'm not that person. It's really weird. And it's so weird. It's so weird. Like it's kind of just like I wish I knew then what I know now.
Uh,
It's just like I wish I can just like go back in time and just like tell my 25-year-old self like, hey, this is where you are now. You will not be there 6, 7 years into the future. You won't even recognize who you are in a good way. But it's very cringy. Like it's very cringy.
Oh, I
I,
yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. I didn't do a lot of video stuff at that point, but a lot of the photos just like they are so embarrassing to go back and look at. And I like to talk about that a lot in my trans peer group and with folks because um, there was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of, I had a therapist at the time, and um, she talked to me a lot about like wearing age appropriate clothes and these different things. And it seemed like there were a lot of rules and stuff that I needed to follow that I wasn't following all of that. And kind of looking back now, I just look at it from the perspective of like that period is just so cringy anyways, because you have no idea what you're doing. You're just figuring it out and
mhm.
all of that, that it kind of doesn't matter what you do in that period. You're gonna hate it later, so you might as well like make the most of it and wear all wear all those ridiculous clothes that you've wanted to since you were a teenager, and like it's not gonna matter. Like you're gonna look back and you're gonna hate it regardless. So live into it and have fun with it.
Yeah, because it's literally like at that point I was trying to figure out like how to wear my clothes to fit my body type. My body type was changing so fast and being on testosterone. So it's like you go from wearing tight-ish shirts to okay, like your body goes from like being curvy to like now you just like boxy. So you have to get and my shoulders were just like growing so fast. And it was just like a video where we talked about like the changes that I was experiencing with bottom growth and like the way my voice is dropping so rapidly and how I didn't even know how to deal with it. Like the way my face like it was like a week by week update, and like to go back and watch it in real time, it's like it's cool to watch, but it's just like it's so cringy because it's like I don't even look like that.
Hmm.
Like it's so weird. It's like I don't even like hearing my old voice. It's like is that what it sound like? It's so weird. It's like I cringe when people bring it up to me. I'm just like, you still watch that, but I understand everybody's at a different place in their journey. So I mean, if that's what that's a good start for them. I kind of feel like it's kind of like a good week by week breakdown. But
Mm.
yes, it's very very cringy.
I love that you're able to
Very
do that and add that diary and that record of what of your transition, but then also have all of those wonderful pieces for everybody to watch and to learn from. I'm kind of curious if it's happened for you yet, but not too terribly long ago, I kind of hit this suddenly hit this thing where I can look at my photos of myself pre-transition without it triggering any feels, without it triggering anything negative, and I now see that as a almost as a different person, a different life. Like I know them, I remember them, but but that's not me. Is that something similar to what you've experienced?
yes. I jokingly tell people I have lived several lives because I have. Yeah, like, but yeah, it's also like at first it was very triggering for me, but now I'm at the point to where it's a point of appreciation. Like I look back at those pictures and I'm like, if it wasn't for who I was then, Kason wouldn't be here today. So I'm at a point of appreciation. Like I'm grateful that I was raised as a little girl because if I happen to have a daughter, I would know how I want to raise her. If I happen to have a son, I know how I want to raise him. It's just like I'm grateful to being that I was raised as a girl because now I know how to treat women. I know how to talk to women. I know what not to say to women. It's kind of just like so looking back at those pictures of me from girlhood to teenage years, it gets still a little cringy to look at. But more so for like my childhood pictures, it's like it's a point of appreciation because I can look at old pictures and like I knew can kind of remember where I was mentally at that point in time, and it's kind of just like okay, like I'm very grateful to my parents that they document as much as they could in my childhood because I have a lot to look back on, a lot to be grateful for. Versus when I first seen him, it was kind of like, okay, this is triggering. Like, why? Like, do I have to constantly be reminded of who I was born as and like how I was raised? But now it's definitely a form of appreciation because without that person, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. So,
You mentioned something way early on in the interview, and I wanted to kind of circle back to that, and I just sort of remembered about it now. Of in sort of doing a late stage reevaluation of myself and kind of some of my personality traits and where those come from. We talked before about the experiences that you had that now under the in the trans lens, make sense in a different way. But I found that, you know, my tendency to put others first at all costs above myself.
mhm.
The fact that I have a tendency to be a people pleaser, that I have a hard time understanding my needs and my boundaries, and let alone putting them first and standing up for them. Has that been a similar experience for you in you know moving past that and starting to live your life for you instead of always living your life with the expectation of like other people have rules for me that I need to follow.
Yes, it took me a long time to get to that place, especially growing up being raised as a girl. It's ingrained in you. The people pleasing. You can't, especially like when you're growing up and you're telling the day boys, oh, you can't tell him no. You have to do this, do that to please your boyfriend, please your man. So that is definitely still ingrained in me. I've gotten better about setting my boundaries, and when I say no, saying no, no explanation. I don't feel like I have to explain to you why I don't feel comfortable doing it. No, it's just a firm no. So yeah, I've definitely had to learn how to set my boundaries, stand by my boundaries, and not let people make me feel like I have to over explain while I'm saying what I'm saying. So yeah, that's definitely something I had to learn. People pleasing, I don't. do it as much, but because it's very ingrained in who I am. I feel like I have to please everyone to make everyone happy. But as time has progressed, I've had to respect my boundaries more, and also realize that if I don't adhere to my boundaries, how it leaves me feeling mentally after the fact. And I don't like being in that type of headspace. So I'm just gotten to the point to where other people know, hey, these are my boundaries. If you can't, respect them, then we don't have anything to talk about.
Mm. I love that. I love that part of the journey and that part of growth. There's so much that we get out of this journey. There's so much there's so many opportunities for growth and so many places where we can drop those those rules and expectations about who we're supposed to be and realize that we can really be whoever we want to be. And I love our opportunity as members of the trans community to kind of show the world that, like, no, like, if I can be me and do this, like, you can finally, like, let go and be yourself and put
Mhm.
yourself first.
Yeah. I think a lot of people need to hear that, because I know for me, beginning my transition, I literally, because the only thing that really stopped me from transitioning early was my grandparents, because my grandparents were literally like my second set of parents. They had a big hand in raising me and my younger sister. So when I started my transition, my grandfather was dying of cancer. So I literally was kind of like trying to postpone me starting testosterone, because I was like, I didn't want him to hear the voice change. I didn't want him to see the physical changes, because I didn't want to offend him. But it got to a point to where it was like, okay, like, if I pretty much wanted to wait for them to pass on to start my transition, it was like, at that point, I didn't know how long I was going to be waiting. So it was like, okay, your grandparents are going to love you regardless. So I pretty much wrote both of them a letter saying, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Well, I typed it up because they can't read my handwriting, but I typed it up and I emailed it to them. I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Medically, I'm still your grandchild. I'm still the same person. My personality won't change. Only thing will change is the physical. Um, I sent them that, and I was just like, I would call home, talk to my grandfather before he passed, at the beginning of my transition. And but he had throat cancer, so he really couldn't talk, but he could hear me, and he could like kind of hear the changes, but he never said anything to me about it. But I think my grandma probably took it harder than what my mother did, honestly. But it was just also was another boundary. Like, if you can't, like, I let everyone know in my family what I was doing. If you can't accept it, then we have nothing to talk about, because I'm not going back on my happiness, because I sacrificed my happiness for at that point 25 years. So
Well, I don't think I have any other questions for you. Is there anything before we close out that you want to plug or talk about that you're working on?
so right now I'm working on a photo series of trans mass folks, and like the vulnerability of being a trans masculine person in America in this political climate. Still at the beginning phases of that, so I'm trying to like sort everything out. But I think that's just about that, and probably like my personal Instagram. I'm more so my personal Instagram than anything else. I think
Mhm.
that's probably like the only thing that I want to plug. And then, if folks want to just come shoot me a message and talk to me, I'm always available.
Wonderful. I love it when our guests are open to that and offer that because, excuse me, yeah, that can be really important for people to not only be able to see somebody and, learn a lot from their story, but that connection and the ability to follow up and ask some more questions. So thank you for that. And we have here on, below your video, Be True Photos is you on Instagram, and that's where we'll see
Hmm.
that photo series that you're working on.
Yes.
Wonderful. So everybody make sure to go follow B period True Photos on Instagram right now. And, again, thank you so much, Kason, for agreeing to come on the show and sharing your story. It's been wonderful having you.
No problem. I'm extremely grateful. I appreciate the platform.
All right, y'all. That is going to do it for us for the night. Thank you so much for coming and joining us and, being here in chat and offering everything. Tony, I'm so sorry to hear about the fact that you got laid off and that it's probably because of the fact that you're trans. I'll be messaging you directly and we'll talk about it. Coming up on the Transverse, we've got Saturday, as I plugged before the show, Being Trans with Lilith and Amanda. And that is every Saturday at noon, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. But in the meantime, I will be doing a special drawing stream on Thursday night, a 3-hour stream, drawing for Kami Anya, who was a prize winner for the recent Meowster Mutual Aid event that we did. So come and join us. Kami Anya is going to be on with me that night. So we'll be hanging out and talking while I draw a picture of her kitty for her. So yeah, that's going to be super fun. Sorry, Rich, you're not going to be able to join me, but it'll be very fun. Come and watch. So yeah, that is Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. So again, love you all. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you on one of those other days. I need to find my end screen. I haven't assigned it to a quick key yet. But bye.